Hey, good evening, everybody. It's been a little while since we've been online together, but I'm glad that you could all join us tonight. Tonight, we are being joined by Michelle Shocklee. We are going to talk about her books, Count the Nights by Stars, which, hi, Michelle, how are you?
Hi, good.
Good. I was laughing because I screwed that title up. I don't know how many times trying to tell people about your books, and I'd go, Count the Stars by, no, that. You got to count.
Count the nights first.
Yeah, so I was trying very hard to say it correctly. So it still makes me giggle, but thank you for joining us tonight. I'm very excited to talk to you. So
Thank you for having me.
you're welcome. So I usually start with this is, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book? I know it released today. Today is Tuesday. Released
A week from today.
That's what it was.
22nd.
Yep.
It was supposed to release on the 8th, but it got pushed back to the 22nd.
Yeah, all those delays that are happening now are very frustrating for not only you guys, but us readers also.
Yes.
What do you mean I'm not getting my book on time?
Yes.
Don't they understand? So,
Right.
yeah, you're right. A week ago, I lost a week in there. Sorry about that. So. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Count the Nights by Stars, and we'll get started.
Okay, thank you. This book is a historical time slip or split time, whichever one you want to call it. And it's set in Nashville. And the years that it's set in is 1897 and 1961. And the reason I chose 1897 was because that was when the Tennessee Centennial Exposition took place. But about 6 months out of that year, from May to October, there was an exposition there in Nashville. And if you've ever been to Nashville and you've been to Centennial Park, you'll recognize the Parthenon was part of that. So, and then 1961, that was kind of just a real pivotal year in Nashville. There was a lot going on with the civil rights. And my location that I chose is the Maxwell House Hotel. And that was an important year in the hotel's life.
Yes, and we're going to try really hard to not give spoilers away, but
Right.
I will apologize to anybody because sometimes I start asking questions and then go, I shouldn't be asking this. Just give away a plot line. Sorry about that. So we're going to try really hard, but it is a fascinating book. I have to admit, I didn't know anything about either time period in Nashville. So I really, truly enjoyed learning about it. Those expos that you wrote about in I don't remember the date, you just said it.
97.
Thank you. I was going to say 1861 and I knew that was wrong. But anyways, so the expo, that was for the state anniversary?
Yes, 100-year anniversary, although it was exactly 1 year late. Yeah. Finances and politics and all that delayed it for about a year. So,
okay. Well, everybody should be fashionably late once in a while.
Right.
Yeah. So I find it interesting. They're, historical books center around like those kind of expos or the World's Fairs and things like that. And I had started reading them, and then I'm realizing we don't do those kind of things as much anymore, where it's like, oh, here's all these new things.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that we've lost, or do you think, yeah, go ahead.
I would have agreed with you 100% until I started researching them.
Oh,
and there are expos still going on. There's actually one. There is one in Dubai going on right now. Now, I don't know if they're like the ones they used to have in the 1800s, 1900s, but I Googled it and I was shocked. There were hundreds, not always in the United States, but there were hundreds of them through about the late 1700s all the way till now.
Well, now I'm going to have to look them up. So
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, well, things I don't learn on the internet.
I know. I mean, I would like to attend one, and I think there's supposed to be one in the US like in 2025 or something like that.
Okay, so
no, I don't think they're like the ones that I'm talking about in the book, but who knows?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
I really will have to go look that up. So fascinating, because
yeah,
I know there was a World's Fair somewhere in the year I graduated from high school, somewhere in the US. And my family went, but they left like the day after I graduated. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to go to the World's Fair with you guys. Which now, as an adult, I'm like, you're an idiot. Go to the World's Fair.
Yep.
But you know, priorities when you're 18, they're different than when you are, well, now.
Exactly.
So I know they were not long ago.
Right.
I was alive, so that's not that
right.
long.
Right. I agree.
Interesting. I'm going to have to look them up because that fascinates me.
Yeah.
But so we're going to just kind of keep talking. You guys send your questions in. We will keep going from that. I'm interested because of the different, and there's going to be things we're going to give away in this. I'm sorry, because otherwise we can't ask questions. And
That's fine.
They're at the camera for an hour and it's no fun. In the book, and especially in the 1800s there, you do a lot with the human trafficking. And I find those storylines interesting because everybody, you know, the news media and stuff will make it like something that's new to this time.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about the research, and was it something that would have been like now where we think it's like everywhere?
You know, I'm really glad you asked that, and I'm going to get my little papers because I want to read directly from them. My research for that thread, that part of the story, I wanted to find newspaper articles or something that solidified my suspicion that human trafficking was going on during that. So I looked up newspapers in Nashville from the Nashville Tennessean, which is the newspaper then and is the newspaper now. And I looked in the year 1897, and I specifically wanted the word prostitution to come up.
Okay.
And so I found 12 references, about 9 articles, but 12 references. And the one that really popped out to me is dated Friday, August 27th, 1897. That would have been right smack dab in the middle of the exposition months because it started in May and it ended in October. So here we are on October 27th. Yeah. And the verbiage this article uses is that a young girl was lured from her home for the purpose of prostitution. So there we have right in the middle of the exposition that's happening in Nashville. That's in Nashville. There was another article that used the words procuring young women for the purpose of prostitution. And then the third one that just really hit my heart was that there's a man who was arrested for abducting they're called a pretty 18-year-old girl for the purpose of prostitution. Wow. So that right there tells you it was happening a lot right here in Nashville in 1897. Wow. So you have to assume it was going on everywhere.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, and I mean, I hate to say that because it sounds like, oh,
right.
It's not.
Right.
It's just,
yeah.
You know, it's that history is history and we all repeat it continuously.
Yes. Unfortunately, that is being repeated and still today in 2022.
Yeah, that's amazing to me. So, and I did find that as really a very interesting part of your storyline, and especially the arc of that, but you know, how you did carry it forward. Okay, you people need to go out and read this book right now. Come back for 10 minutes and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're going to move on to the Maxwell House. And I know we're only going to touch on it a little bit. Everybody knows kind of the history. I shouldn't say everybody. I had to read on some of it. I knew a little bit of it. So, so why the Maxwell House?
So my husband and I moved to the Nashville area in 2017, and I had never even been to Tennessee. I didn't know much about Nashville other than the music, the country music thing. And so as we started doing little field trips around town and seeing things, I started to learn the history, and the Maxwell House history just fascinated me. And so as I dug into it, I thought, oh, I'm going to have to put a story there. That is definitely going to be a setting. And really in this book, I feel like the Maxwell House, because it appears in both settings, both parts of the book, I feel like it's actually a character. I just love the Maxwell House. So, but that hotel was built or started to be built in 1859 prior to the Civil War.
Wow.
And it wasn't finished during the Civil War, but both armies who occupied Nashville both used it for barracks and hospital. So after the war, it got finished and it became like the place to stay in Nashville. So I love that my characters in 1897 get to experience its opulence and its beauty. But then in 1961, it had kind of fallen into disrepair. It was older, it was old, it was over 100 years old by that time. And it was a residential hotel at that point with only 60 long-term residents.
Yeah, I found that interesting that, and to be honest with you, as I was reading it, I'm like, I want to live there.
Yep.
I mean, it just sounded like a neat thing. They have become family. Yeah. So, and you have one of your characters, this, I'm not giving too much away here, that did come as a hotel resident, not a long-term resident. Were they still doing hotel rooms at that time, or was that just something you added for the storyline? Okay.
Yeah, they were. There were still, the hotel had over 200 guest rooms.
Okay.
So yeah, they still welcomed guests, but it was really more of a resident hotel. And, you know, people didn't want to stay in an old rundown hotel when they could stay at someplace a lot fancier and newer.
Yeah, probably had air conditioning or something.
Actually, the pictures that I've seen of the hotel in 1961, there's a lot of window units. So yeah.
That probably would have been very popular at that time.
Yeah.
We all remember those when you stay in hotel rooms and didn't sleep because
yeah.
Yep. So, okay. And everybody's probably wondering, and maybe they know the answer. I had a look because I wasn't sure. Is that where that Maxwell House coffee comes from?
That's where it comes from. In 1892, there were a couple of guys in Nashville making blends of coffee. And so they took a bunch of free coffee to the Maxwell House and said, would you serve it? So they served it. And when the hotel ran out, they went back to their previous coffee and the guests were like, no, we want that good stuff. So the hotel started buying their coffee, and about 6 months later, the guys asked if they could name it Maxwell House Coffee. So, and the good to the last drop part, that has a little bit of controversy to it because it is said that President Roosevelt came to Nashville, tasted the coffee, and said it was good to the last drop. But there's some little controversy that says that that slogan was actually in use for some other drink company already. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I had always heard that Roosevelt had said that. That's why it was that way. So, but we'll believe what we want.
I think so.
So when we were talking before we came on camera here, you mentioned what you and your husband do for a living. And I'll let you elaborate on that, but also go into how does that affect and how you're writing, and because you write dual times. So yeah.
So my husband and I are estate caretakers. So we live and work on big, beautiful properties and help the owners take care of them. And so not only does it provide me a little extra writing time because I don't have a full regular 9-to-5 job always. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't. But it's taken us to some interesting places like Nashville. And I certainly wouldn't have written this book or my previous book, Under the Tulip Tree, had we not moved to Nashville. So, but, working as estate caretakers doesn't necessarily give me the ideas for the books, but it has taken me to places where I have gotten the ideas for books.
Have you ever thought about writing one about an estate you stayed on, or I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
Yes and no. We just moved from a very historic property here in the Nashville area, and I would love to set a book there, but I don't think that would be completely appropriate, but I could certainly use it as an example, or not an example, but as inspiration for a story. And so I'm sure I will. I will.
Yeah, there's a million things I want to ask, but I'm sure I shouldn't ask you that online here. It just sounds like an interesting job. It is. I don't think I've ever met anybody that's done that before. So it just fascinates me.
It is.
So
we enjoy it.
Oh, good. And it's just neat. So I do have one question here that somebody is asking, how long do you spend on the research for your stories? And that's
Too long. Too long. I love the research part of it. I'm just fascinated by, like when I was reading about the Maxwell House, I just spent hours devouring things, articles about the Maxwell House, and same with the Tennessee Centennial Exposition. There does come a point where you have to stop, but I really do actually research throughout the whole writing process, because I'll come to a point where I need to know a specific train schedule or something like that. And so I'll get into research and try not to go down too many rabbit trails, but rabbit trails are fun too.
Yeah, I have never gone on a rabbit trail in my life. Liar. So I was going to say, I know, I was going to ask, do you have an idea first and then do the research, or is it you start researching something and then the idea comes along?
Lately, these last couple of books, the idea for the book has come from research for a prior book. So yeah. So then that's what happened with both of this book and Under the Tulip Tree, both came from research from other books.
Yes. And you know what, I'm going to mention Under the Tulip Tree. If you haven't read it, go find it. It is fascinating. And you're going to get a spoiler here, but at the end, when they found out, and this is Under the Tulip Tree, readers, don't yell at me, when they found out they were related, kind of
a little bit,
their families knew each other. How's that?
Yeah.
Is that something you found in research, or was that just like an idea you had? Because it was just, I loved it. I really did. I thought that was such a neat part of that story. Sorry to jump books on you.
Oh, that's okay. I love talking about Under the Tulip Tree. That's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was actually a little bit of both. A little bit of research and a little bit of my own imagination as I took that research and stretched it out a little bit. But yeah, there's stories like that in the slave narratives, the actual real slave narratives. So
yeah. It was such a good book. I think I read it.
Thank you.
Days. So thank you for that. Thank you for indulging my rabbit trail. See, I never go on with it.
No.
So I have somebody that is asking, so we're going to jump subjects again. Sorry about that, but they're asking, what types of books do you like to read? And do you have any good recommendations of either something on your to be read pile, or that you're looking forward to coming out by somebody else?
I love to read historical fiction. That's why I got into writing historical fiction, because I love to read it. And of course, Francine Rivers has got to be my number one go-to. So I am thrilled that she has a brand new book out, The Lady's Mine. It is on the top of my to be read pile, but when I'm in the midst of writing a new book, I can't read for pleasure. It's not pleasing. So as soon as I get to the point where I can read that book, that's my first one I'm going to next.
Nice. Oh, you're going to enjoy that one.
Oh yeah.
I won't tell you about it. It's good. So, okay. So then I'm going to ask a question. I usually wait for a little later in the evening, but you like to read historical, you write historical. If there was a genre that you don't write in, that you could try, what would it be?
I don't know if this is a genre, but I would love to write a time travel book. I don't believe in time travel, but I think it would be so much fun to write a time travel book.
Yeah. I wonder how much different that would be than a dual time.
Well, Jody Headland has a couple of time travels out that are brand new, and I've read the first one. I need to get the second one, but I just thought it was so fascinating the way she did that whole story. That was just cool.
Yes, and get book number 2. You want to read it.
Yes.
And I know a website you can get it from. Just
I do too.
But that's interesting. And I hadn't thought about that you write the dual time. So I wonder, so if you do write one, let me know. We'll get together and discuss how dual time is different than time travel.
Different than time. Okay.
So
okay.
Write that one right down.
All right.
And we'll do that. Oh,
Sounds
somebody wants
good.
to know, how many drafts do you go through and what details are involved? I'm not sure how that, but how many drafts do you go through? That's a good question.
I edit as I write. It's a bad habit. They tell you really not to do that. They tell you just write the whole thing and then go back, but I can't do that. So I'll write, a couple of chapters that today, and then tomorrow I will edit them before I start writing new words on the chapter. So by the time I get to the end, it's a fairly clean manuscript. I will go back and edit a couple of times before I send it to my editor, my publisher. But I've been told they're pretty clean manuscripts. So that's
Nice.
just how I do it.
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever gotten the same answer from any of the authors I've ever talked to.
Mhm.
All of you do it the craft your way.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you encourage other writers, and if we get to questions on writing and stuff, but yeah, I like that. Because what works for you is never going to work for anybody else. So
Right.
Oh, and then somebody wants to know if you're a plotter or a pantser.
I used to be a pantser when I was young. But now that I'm older and I forget things, I have to be a plotter.
Okay.
I don't plot every detail, but it's kind of like a roadmap. It keeps me going to my destination without going too many rabbit trails, as we like to say. But yeah, I mean, there's always going to be surprises along the way that I didn't, know were coming up. Just like on a regular road trip, you might have a flat tire you didn't know you were going to have. So.
Or a weather delay in the airport. So
correct.
So have you ever had where you were like, okay, this is where we're going now? You've talked about the flat tire, but has there ever been like you've actually had to take like a left turn because it's like, okay, this is where we're going because that works better? Or are your characters pretty much follow you?
Oh no, they don't follow me. No, I have to wrestle them into control. But, by the time I'm really started getting into the book by, chapter 4 or 5, I know where it's going. So there's not too many detours. There are surprises, but not too many detours.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, have you ever found something in your research like was again left field maybe and then included in your book, or did you not include it in your books? Because I know sometimes you find something. Yeah. There's
lots of research that never makes it into the book. Lots of research.
Okay.
So I can't think of anything specific that I just all of a sudden discovered and threw it into the book, but I mean, there's always interesting stuff that you discover along the way.
Yeah, that's very true. Somebody would like to know what you are working on now. If you can talk about it. I know we all understand sometimes you can't divulge too much information. We get that. So
I'm working on another split time book, whichever you want to call it. It is still set in Tennessee, but we're leaving Nashville. We're going to the East Mountains. So kind of out near the Great Smoky Mountain.
Nice.
That beautiful area. I love that area. I'm not even halfway through with it. So, and it probably just has a working title. So I don't want to throw that out just yet.
Yep.
But it will come out in probably summer 2023.
Awesome. We're already looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Do you have times, like, is it in 1861 or something? Can you tell us that or not?
Yeah. This one is not too far away. It was 1973 and 1943.
Oh, that's not bad. So is it kind of a World War II then, or is it
no,
because you're okay? No. Yep. Yeah. Somebody wants to know how you pick the names of your characters. I always like to hear these stories.
I always look at the birth year that my character would have been born, and I Google, popular name lists, and there's usually 200 on that list. Okay. And I'll just scroll down, and it's kind of like naming children. You have to pick the right name. And I have changed names many, many times in manuscript. I'll start with a name, and then I'll get a few chapters in. And I'm like, that just is not working. So, yeah. But by the time I get to the end of the book, I love all their names. So I've named them correctly.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. I don't want you to
Yeah.
be reading the book going, that is not the right name. I should have changed.
Right.
Okay, so here's a question I've never asked an author before. So whoever sent this in, this is a great question. Unless it's an embarrassing question and you don't want to answer it, then say so. What book would we be totally shocked to see on your bookshelf? Isn't that an interesting question?
That is interesting.
Even myself, I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, I can think of some naughty books out there that I would never read.
Yeah, like I said, if it's too embarrassing and you don't
want to do naughty books. Actually, I think people would be surprised to learn that I would not have Harry Potter books on my shelf. Okay. You know, I don't have anything against Harry Potter, you know, that it's just a personal choice. So
yep. I will admit they're not on my shelf either. I think my children all own them, but I don't own copies of my own. So don't apologize for that. I personally was too old. I enjoyed them, but it wasn't like I'm not a Harry Potter head.
Yeah.
I don't know what they call themselves. Potterhead.
I don't know.
Yeah, I got it right. My little helper over here is like, yep. I'm too old for that. So what for you is the hardest part of writing and the easiest part of writing?
The hardest part of writing a book is writing the book. I get so caught up in the research that I could research, you know, forever and never sit down to write the book. So, but I have days when the words just flow and it's wonderful, but there are days when it is just really hard work to get 500 words out that make sense. So, but I think the easiest part is for me is developing the characters. I just love that. I just love adding on the little nuances that make them who they are.
Interesting. Huh. I have heard the writing part and I agree with you. I've talked to many authors and I'm like, I have a hard time stringing a coherent thought together when I'm trying to write a note to a co-worker. So I don't know how you guys do it. So, but I don't know if there's a story behind this that maybe a friend or somebody, but they said, what did you do to celebrate when your first novel was published? Uh-oh.
I think we did anything. My husband might have taken me out to dinner.
Okay, because it is a question. It's a legitimate question.
And when my first book came out, we were living way out in the boonies of Texas. There was not a town within 30 minutes of us. So
it is in the boonies.
Yeah. So I don't think we did a whole lot. Sorry.
I got book mail. I
lead a very boring life. I'm sorry.
No. You take care of estates. That's fascinating. I'm going to call you later and go, okay, so.
Yeah.
If you were going to give some advice to somebody who is interested or is starting to be an author, what is some of the best words of advice you got when you got started?
I started this a long time ago, long before I ever got published.
Okay.
I went to a conference, and that's one of the things that I would definitely say people need to attend writers' conferences. I learned so much. But at my very first writers' conference, I was just as green as could be. I knew nothing about writing books, and I really was not very well read in Christian fiction.
Okay.
And so I took the fiction track, and the teacher was an author I'd never heard of. And I got to the class, and everybody was starstruck because this author was teaching the class, but I didn't know who it was. But by the end of the conference, I was her biggest fan. And of course, it was Francine Rivers. I'd never heard of her. I'd never heard of her.
No,
but
something I don't know.
I didn't know. I really didn't know. That's how green I was. But I got out my little notebook that I took notes from that conference. And one of the things Francine told us was, don't give up. We're all still learning. So that's what I would tell anyone who's writing books. Don't give up, don't get frustrated, keep going. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes a while.
Yeah, and those are great words. And to be honest with you, you could use that in any role
Right.
in your life. But
Right.
yeah, I could see Francine saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's pretty cool about that, making sure and mentoring people and stuff.
Yes.
So
Very much so.
yeah, no kidding. So, and you learn from the best. So
Yeah.
it's all downhill from there. It was easy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, somebody wants to know about your writing space. Do you have a dedicated area, or do you just kind of plop down somewhere and start writing?
I do, now that we are empty nesters. I have my own office.
Nice.
So I have my desk there that I love. I've written 3 books on it and I love that desk. And yeah, it's on the opposite side of where my husband's man cave is. So I don't hear his TV. And because I have to have quiet. I am one of those authors that, like, the slightest noise, I'm like, I
guess I'm only writing 10 words today. Thanks.
Yes. But I do enjoy my office very much.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. And then now this is a question. I hesitated, but it does intrigue me. But if you can't answer it for whatever reason, please, like I said before, please feel free. We totally accept that. So somebody wants to know, and I'm assuming this is somebody that is looking to continue writing or learning to write, is how did you find your agent and then land your first contract?
I found my first agent, Les Stobie, at a conference. That's where I met him. I signed up for agent appointments, and that, he liked what I was writing, and I'd had some interest from editors at that same conference. So he signed me within about a couple of days after the conference. And when Les retired, I signed on with the Steve Lobby agency with Bob Hosteller. Yeah, I love those guys, godly men. I'm so very, very blessed to be with them.
Oh,
so
good.
what was the second question?
How did you land your first contract?
Oh, through Les. I finished my novel, although, I want to say that was not the first novel I had ever completed. I had probably written 4 complete novels prior to the one that was first published. Okay. So whether or not those other 4 will ever be published, I don't know. I kind of call those my practice books. Okay. So yeah. But I finished that novel and Les sent it out, and it was rejected by quite a few other publishers, but LPC bought it and bought my second one. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. And now you're with Tyndale.
And now I'm with Tyndale, and I love them.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Let me see here. We got a couple other questions. Oh, I know a good one, because this one always fascinates me, is do you have a favorite character in any of the books you've read, even the unpublished ones? We'll go with that, because you'll have to publish it. But and then piggybacked on that, do you have a favorite book? Like, and I know you mentioned of the Tulip Tree, but of your books. So
of my books.
Yep.
Okay. So of my books, I would say that the favorite character I've ever created is Frankie and Under the Tulip Tree. I love her. She is just a composite of a lot of different slave narratives that I'd read, and just kind of put them all together into her. I love her story, and I love her feistiness, because I'm not feisty and she is, and I love that.
Yeah.
Picking a favorite book is really hard, because I love each of the stories. They're all very different. So I'm going to say that Count the Nights by Stars is my favorite right now.
Okay.
Because I just love that story. Yep. I love it.
Yep. That's that, and I have to say that Frankie fascinated me in her timeline. Again, if you haven't read it, I'm really sorry, but you've had a year. So, so when, before she became the modern part of the tale, because you have the 2 where you didn't pull any punches about slavery. I mean, she had a lot happen to her.
Yeah.
So Yeah, it's just interesting that, you drew from many different stories, but
Mhm.
yeah, Frankie was a fascinating character. I could have read a whole book about just her story.
Yeah,
Honestly.
yeah,
The whole thing was
yeah.
good.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I am really, really like her character. So,
Thank you.
let me see here. I'm trying to find a different question here. Oh, there was a good one. Here's a good one that somebody asked is, your faith, how does it affect your writing? And how do you include it in your stories to make it natural?
I grew up in a Christian home, went to church all the time, but I probably was not, I was about 28 or 29 before I really understood what I was doing then,
Okay.
what it meant to be a follower of Jesus
Okay.
Christ. And so, of course, it's a growth process. I'm still growing in my faith walk, but it is a part of who I am. It is as much, I have brown eyes, that's part of me. Being a Christ follower is part of me. So it is definitely always going to come out in my writing. I don't try to be preachy because I don't want people to preach at me. I just want it to be a real natural part of the characters' lives. And not all of them are Christian. Not everybody in my books are Christians. And that's just the world the way it is. But the main characters are always going to have at least a bit of a faith walk as they're traveling through this journey that I'm taking them on. So.
Yeah, I think that's why I like for you, it's very, I'm not sure organic is the right word, but it just naturally becomes part of it.
Good.
And I do appreciate that not everybody's a Christian because,
Mhm.
they have to deal,
Yeah.
as we do too, in the real world. These are people that, and none of us are perfect
Right.
anyways, but.
Right.
Yeah, so I
Mhm.
appreciate that. And I'm with you. I don't read a fiction book to be preached at.
Mhm.
So I don't mind. That sounds terrible. I like it in there. I don't mind it. It's okay. But I really
Yeah.
appreciate what it fits the story. So
Thanks.
so somebody here, and this is a good question too. Were you a reader as a child? And if so, was there somebody that fostered your reading? And then do you have a favorite childhood book that you still like? Maybe it sits on your bookshelf.
It does, actually. My mom was an elementary school teacher. So we loved books. My mom and dad both loved books. And so our home was filled with books. They were both voracious readers. Scholastic book day was like Christmas, for my mom, because she always ordered books for us. And one of my most favorite cherished memories of my childhood is I was about 9 years old and it was summer because my mom was a teacher. So she was home and she read Little Women to my sister and I. And that's just one of my most favorite memories. I have that book still sitting on my shelf in my office. And, books have been a part of my life as far back as I can remember. I have a little book that, I take out every Christmas called Santa Mouse that my mom bought when I was about 9 months old or so. So, they've always been a part of my life and I love it. I tried to foster that in my own kids, and one of my sons is a reader, but the other's not. And I just think he's missing out.
I can remember when my son, after he got out of college and he, had gotten a job and he had quite a long commute. It wasn't distance wise, but he lived in Chicago. So time wise it was. And he wrote me one time, this was before texting was a big thing. So he wrote me an email that said, I have found reading back. I'm listening to Moby Dick. And I'm like, Moby Dick? So
Whatever.
I didn't argue with him. And I'm like, I should probably read Moby Dick, but I haven't, sorry. I can't do it. I can't do it. So, but I love that. Little Women is one of my favorites from when I was a teenager too. Just, there's something about it that sits in your heart that's wonderful. So you have the actual book your mom read, not a copy of the one she read.
I have the actual book.
That is awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Okay. And I apologize because I should have talked about this earlier. If somebody wants to know if you have a say in this book design, and it is gorgeous. They are correct, because they said it's beautiful. So, and yeah, you know, what do you get to say about it or not say about book design or cover design? Sorry.
Tyndale has such talented designers.
They do.
So they read the book, they get a feel for what the story is, and then the designer develops 2 different covers, and they're very, very different covers. And so my editor sends them to me and says, which one do you like? And so, you know, it's hard to choose because they're both so beautiful, but this one just stood out to me so much because I love the way she incorporated the map of the Tennessee Centennial Exposition onto the blouse. I just love that.
I was very rude a minute. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
I love it. I love it.
Yes.
And I love the coral on her blouse and the stars in the background. It's just perfect.
And that makes me think, and I meant to ask this also, good grief, I gotta start writing things down. The title, where because I goofed it up more times than I got it right. Okay. Where did you get that idea? I mean, you get the Easter egg, you understand where it comes from, but where you still had to have the idea from it or for it.
Yeah, actually, the book I'm working on now is under a working title. Counting Nights by Stars was also contracted under a working title. So my editors and I actually, you know, changed it to Count the Nights by Stars, because that's a very, that's a line in the book. It's actually a little poem that some of the characters repeat. So that's where it came from.
Yeah. I wondered which had come first, the title or because I know quite often you guys have working titles, which, and I never ask, because sometimes they're just a matter of like, this is Fred's story, because I don't know what to call it. So I never ask, but sometimes they share it. It's like, oh, well, I know why they didn't use that title. And you're it's like, yeah, I know too. So I just, I just don't ask you to repeat them. So somebody wants to know if you have any other hobbies besides reading and writing.
You know, we love being outside. We love going to the lake. We love going to the beach. We love mountains. My husband and I are looking into purchasing electric bikes. I told my oldest son that we were doing that because we need more exercise. And he's like, the electric bikes? Doesn't that defeat the purpose? It's like, no, Tennessee.
No, I can go uphill.
Exactly. Tennessee is very hilly, and I want to ride bikes, but I can't get up the hills. So we're going to get electric bikes.
That's brilliant. And I've got to remember that, because I told my husband, my husband rides bike. He does long distances. And he's like, gonna go for a bike ride? And I'm like, no, we don't go for a bike ride. You're over there. And I I need an electric one to keep up with it.
Yes. I'm looking forward to zooming around on it.
I love that. I'm going to remember that. So, what is one thing you wish your readers knew about you and nobody has ever asked? It doesn't have to be embarrassing, please. That's not what I meant, but just something, you know, you wish everybody knew that.
I guess there's not really anything I wish everybody knew, but
we won't tell anybody. It's just us.
Yeah, it's just us.
Right.
Honestly, I was a very, very shy child. I practically hid in my shadows. I didn't try out for any sports in school because I was afraid to fail, and I was afraid of people looking at me. And so God really healed me of that in college. And it was really because I had this amazing college roommate, Sherry, who just brought me out of my shadows and into the world. And I'm just very grateful for that.
Yeah, interesting. To me, it's a good question, because like I said, I'm not looking for gossip or embarrassment. It's just fun to learn those things about each other. So, and then again, I think we must have more than one wannabe author or working on being an author.
That's good.
Yeah, so they keep asking these really good questions. How long does it take from concept to release date for you to do a book?
From concept to release date is about a year and maybe a year and a half. It depends on the book. Yeah. From the time you sign the contract, which, you know, you should have part of the book written by then
Okay,
to the time it releases is definitely a full year.
okay,
So.
yeah. And now, do you go contract by contract, or I should say book by book, or do you do like 3 books? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I could don't tell my publishers though.
Okay, I won't. Again, it's just between you, me, and a few of our closest friends.
I always feel like that would put too much pressure on me. I like doing this one book and getting it finished and then having another contract to get the next book done. So
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
I'm kind of a slow writer.
Oh, I was
So
thinking you were fast with it being a year and a half. So.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, I think I don't think I could do 2 books in 1 year.
Okay. Yeah. Those authors are amazing. So
Yeah.
don't put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
So I know we've talked about Francine. Now, I always ask, is there any author, so no fair mentioning Francine again, that really has inspired you? Living or dead, doesn't matter, but is there one like, that is why I'm into writing, right there, that author?
Well, I would say 2 that from way back in 1979 when my mom brought home Love Comes Softly by Jeanette Oak. You know, that was my introduction to Christian historical fiction. And I can't even tell you how many times I've read that book, probably 30 or more.
You still have that one too?
I still have that one too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I just admire that about people that keep older books like that.
Yeah. I mean, when we've moved, we downsize. I do get rid of books, but not those.
No, there's certain ones that I just like, no, don't get rid of those and don't. And no, I don't loan them out.
Right. No, not those. But then a current Christian historical fiction author would be Tamara Alexander. I love her. She's a dear friend, and I just admire her work so much. And I've read her books over and over too.
Awesome. Yeah, she's got some really good ones. And I know a lot of people that have gone to Canton and stuff in Tennessee because of her books. And I love when historical books do that. Because I know we talked about the Maxwell House. Oh, I can't say that statement.
I know what you were going to say. I know what you were going to say.
Okay, we're going to come back in 2 weeks and I'll ask that question. Read your books.
Yeah.
Got it from Baker. I know they're on the way.
Good.
I'm like, oh wait, I can't ask that question. Good heavens. So, okay. So I we have jokingly talked about bakerbookhouse.com. Where can we find more about you? Your websites? Are you on Twitter? Where are you? So.
I'm on all of that. I've got my website, the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on all of those.
Okay. Is there one that you prefer more than others, or not really? They're kind of
they're all about the same. Yeah.
I just know for me, Instagram is a mystery. I have which makes my daughters roll their eyes at me, by the way, because it's like, how old are you, lady? But yeah. So I always like to ask, because that way, if you're more comfortable on one, then the readers can find you there quicker. But if you're good on them all, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that I'm throwing myself all off by not asking a question I was thinking of, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. Oh dear, I have just really done it. So, but anyways, so is there anything else you would like to tell us about? Well, you know what? I should ask. What are your, I think you said you had 5 books out. What are their titles? Am I putting you under pressure doing that?
No, I hope not.
Yeah.
So my first 2 books are a series. They're set on a Texas cotton plantation, and it's The Planter's Daughter and The Widow of Rose Hill.
Okay.
And then I have a novella out in a Barber in a collection of stories with Barber. It's the Mail Order Brides collection. Yeah. And then, of course, Under the Tulip Tree, and now Count the Nights by Stars. Next Tuesday, it releases officially.
Yes. So I'm glad to hear that. So, well, I am so glad you joined us tonight. We sure had a good time, and it was fascinating to get to know you. I mean, in person is better always.
Yes.
But I love this. I really do, because I get to meet you guys that I don't always run into, so to speak, on the streets.
Mhm.
So I really enjoyed that. You have an official invite to come in anytime you would like. We would love to have you in the store sometime too. So
I'd love that.
yeah, so, and audience, thank you for joining us. If
Yes,
you have
thank
not
you.
ordered under the tulip tree too, you should order that one too.
Yes, yes.
I can't get any of the titles right now. So Count the Nights by Stars, get your
Mhm.
copy. It is
Yeah.
a fascinating read, and you're gonna have all kinds of questions, so you're gonna send them
Yeah.
in. You'll
And
realize
that's okay. Send them to me. That's
because you're
fine.
gonna realize the question I wanted to ask. I go, oh, now I need to know the answer. So get your copies. They are available at bakerbookhouse.com and various places that I won't mention because they don't need your help. My boss is going to yell at me for that one. But I really enjoyed our time together. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, and you guys all have a good night. We'll see you soon.
All right. Good night.
Good night.